Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Jack Hagel. North Carolina officials are scrambling to find permanent funding for a program that monitors people who have been charged with domestic violence or other crimes. The North Carolina Criminal Justice Information Network uses ankle monitors in about 1,200 cases across the state, but its funds are running low. WRAL state government reporter Paul Specht dug into a dispute over how to fund the program and what it could mean for victims and defendants going forward. Paul, good to see you.
Thanks for having me back.
Let's start at a high level. What is the North Carolina Criminal Justice Information Network? What does it do?
It is a board of about 20 people appointed by the governor and other state lawmakers several years ago. The program's only about 5 years old, and the network, CGen, is even younger than that. And CGen, which is what everyone calls it, is basically the administrator of this technology. People in these cases, they put on ankle monitors, right? And then they're tracked. And if they get too close to a plaintiff or a victim, or if they just violate the terms of a judge's order, it alerts that person, the plaintiff, and they can get in big trouble.
So basically, if a judge says, hey, you're not supposed to go within a certain distance of the person who's accused you of a crime or a person involved in a crime for which you've been convicted, then it sets off an alarm. And what happens next?
That's right. It alerts the victim or the plaintiff in the case, and they can choose whether or not to contact emergency authorities. Oftentimes, as you might suspect, that leads in an arrest. Proponents of this technology say, hey, for victims, for people in these cases, it can help them get away from potential violence, right? And for defendants even, we spoke with one district attorney who said, you know what, there are some people that they don't have long records, and so they go before a judge in a case like domestic violence, and he can choose whether or not to put them in jail until their trial, in the pre-trial period, or they can wear this monitor and agree to have all of their movements tracked so long as they don't get within, a certain number of feet or miles or whatever from the plaintiff. And so it can be seen as beneficial to both parties there.
So now this group is facing a funding problem, right? Which kind of puts this technology in jeopardy, right? Tell us about that.
Right. So they were initially given this seed money, essentially, $3.5 million. Back in 2021. Then in 2023, our state here works on in 2-year increments when it comes to the state budget. They're given $4 million. But over that amount of time, the program has grown. They went from only a handful of judicial districts and counties to now they're in more than 24 judicial districts across 63 counties, if I remember correctly. The Department of Public Safety says that they would need $7 million to operate their current at their current level of service. Now, a representative of CGen, that network we've been talking about, they say they need about $5. They have some money in the bank already, but it's clear they need somewhere between $5 and $7 million to keep this up and running across 63 counties.
Now, funds were running pretty low for this group until actually this month. DPS stepped in with some emergency funding. Tell us about that arrangement, but also what does that mean for the group going forward?
Well, the bullet points are we still don't know what's going to happen to this group in the long term. The background here is that they were prepared to shut down on as recently as last week. An email went out to district court judges on August 15th saying, hey, prepare to deinstall these ankle monitors. But in the following week, they received emergency funding from the Department of Public Safety. Now, why can't that just happen every month? Well, the network is, by law, an independent group, sort of quasi-governmental group, since the governor and other state lawmakers appoint the board members. But they get to choose how to spend their money, but their money comes to them. It's approved by the General Assembly and goes through the Department of Public Safety. So, all that to say, they ran out of money, or they were about to run out of money. They were about to turn off these ankle monitors. DPS, Department of Public Safety, moved some money around and got them what they need at least to operate through September. In the meantime, CGen, the network itself, has to figure out a way to raise money to operate for the next fiscal year, for beyond September.
Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll learn more about efforts to fund the North Carolina Criminal Justice Information Network. Stick around. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. We're talking with WRAL State Government reporter Paul Specht about efforts to fund the North Carolina Criminal Justice Information Network. Paul, CGen's mission seems fairly logical. Do we know how effective it is?
Well, we know that they've expanded in the short amount of time that they've existed from just a handful of counties to 63 counties, and others who were looking into it. We called Johnston County this week, and their district attorney said, hey, we don't have a system like this. We were looking into it. Now we're not so sure. Of course, I'm paraphrasing what he said, but we want to see if it's going to be funded in the long term. Now, we asked CGen's executive director, about its effectiveness. She said they have not had one murder, not had any violence since the program started.
If they can't find funding, presumably this project will go away. Does that pose a danger to alleged victims? I mean, do we know if that would have happened had they not been monitored?
It's hard to tell. And, judges have put these orders in long before the technology was available to track these people. So, there is a world where one could argue that, even without these ankle monitors, people are going to want to do what a judge says, right? Because otherwise they face jail time, longer prison sentences if they're convicted, things like that. But the family that founded this technology, that funded it, their daughter was killed and in a dispute. Her name was Caitlin Whitehurst. And so the idea here is if someone does put this ankle monitor on, if they are in a domestic violence situation and a defendant chooses to commit violence or just get near a plaintiff or victim, this monitoring system gives them a heads up that they wouldn't otherwise have without it. So to answer your question, yeah. I mean, I think there's a very good case to make that without these monitors, victims and plaintiffs are more vulnerable, let's put it that way.
Now, state lawmakers haven't been able to agree on a full spending plan for the current fiscal year. Is that playing a role in CGen's funding situation?
Well, it could. There's no better time to run out of money than when state lawmakers are still putting together a state budget. If they had already put together their state budget like many people expected them to earlier this summer, then the door may have been closed. But because they haven't, maybe there's a door open here, a window open, whatever you want to say. No one has told me that they believe the funding will be there or be granted through the state budget. The funding seems very much up in the air. What's in dispute here is whether or not past state budgets granted CGen recurring funds through the Department of Public Safety. There seems to be confusion between CGen and DPS. DPS says, oh, no, we've interpreted past budgets to have granted all they're going to grant, and CGen was under the impression that past budgets were granting funding on a recurring basis. So there's some confusion there. We have to move forward. They have to move forward as if, that's all behind them, as they need someone to approve new funding. That's what it comes down to. And there is still time for that, but there are no guarantees. We contacted Senator Berger's office, Senator Phil Berger.
Those are the leaders of the legislative leaders.
Right. We contacted legislative leaders, Senate Leader Phil Berger, a Republican, House Speaker Destin Hall, also a Republican, Caldwell County, and they said they weren't even aware of this situation until we called them. So, how long does it take to make the sausage? Will it even get made? I don't know. We're sitting around watching just like everybody else.
So what happens next?
Well, lawmakers, at some point plan to put forward a budget, although they have disagreements on other things like state taxes and raises for employees. The people involved in this program, CGen and DPS, will have to figure out a way to make their case. And we may not see that out in the public. It'll probably be done behind closed doors.
In the meantime, this sort of stunts their growth, right?
Right. As I mentioned, our neighbors here in Wake County to the east, Johnston County, their district attorney, had been interested in this program. He'd heard good things and, was sort of looking into what it would take to introduce it in some of the cases they have out there. But he's not certain that he can move forward until there's some sort of resolution here.
Well, stay on top of it. Promise to keep us updated. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
That's WRAL State Government reporter Paul Specht for his in-depth report on the North Carolina Criminal Justice Information Network. Go to the NC Capital section of WRAL.com. I'm Jack Hagel. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email with triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.